Hey, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I want to talk about how I went straight into community college right after high school and how it was a smart financial decision. So, coming out of high school, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I focused more so on just working, but I did know I want to get like a degree, right? I knew I wanted to get some level of education, wasn't sure what I wanted to study, wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do professionally, but just like everybody else, I kind of thought, college might be a smart thing to do just to be able to, build some of my theoretical knowledge and learn a little bit more about different industries and different subjects. So what I elected to do was go straight into community college. And the reason why I chose community college versus applying to get into other like major universities within the state that I was from, which is Washington State, was I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I didn't want to pay a lot of money trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And I learned that the first 2 years of college are essentially like a waste, right? Or more so, maybe not a waste, but more so focused on taking general education classes, one-on-one classes, introduction classes that are prerequisites for classes that you would take in a decided major. And so the first 2 years is just general education credits. And I was thinking, why would I spend, full tuition costs for general education credits at a university if I don't even know after I finish 2 years if I want to get into a certain major, if I want to continue college, if I'm still trying to figure out what I wanted to do, and knowing that these prices are jacked up. So I chose to go to community college because for the general education classes, they were much cheaper than going straight to university. And it also was something that I was able to do kind of part-time on the side while focusing on working. And that was honestly the best financial decision I could have made during that time, because it took me so long to be able to finish that degree. It took me so long to kind of figure out what I actually wanted to study for a major. And my major is actually in business, and I'm finishing up my bachelor's degree in that. But I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I thought that it would have been too much of a financial burden to take on going straight into a university while still like in discovery mode and still trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And so I'm glad that I made that decision because I saved so much money. And when I went into my actual major and I transferred from, my credits from the community college I graduated from to my major, I did take out student loans and I've been able to pay off a substantial amount. The last video that I made on it was I was roughly around $6,000 in student loan debt. Now I've knocked that down to about $3,000, and I'll make an update video just on that. But I can't imagine having went to this university that I've been doing for the full 4 years and the amount of money that I would have had to pay. And when I went to community college, I elected not to do student loans. I wanted to pay my way through, which is why I also did it part-time. And the tuition costs being lower at a community college allowed me to pay my way through and essentially avoid having to take on any student loans. And I think a lot of people, like if you're, really undecided and you're not accepted to a 4-year school, or even if you are accepted to a 4-year school and you kind of are set on like what you might want to do, it might still be good to consider going to community college for the first 2 years and saving a lot of money off tuition costs, especially if you're a person that's gonna have to take out student loans, or if you're a person that's gonna pay your way through school, or at least for the first 2 years like I did. You don't wanna be having to pay so much money for general education credits for things that are not even within like your major. For the first 2 years where you're really just trying to discover what you might be interested in and deciding what do you want to get major in, right? And so that's what I did, and I saved so much money, and that's honestly the best recommendation I can make for a lot of people. I see a lot of my peers that elected not to do that, and they're still paying off a lot of money in student loans. For some of them, they didn't even finish like college, and so to think that you were paying, hiked up tuition cost for general education credits and you didn't even finish a degree, that's wild. And I think a lot of this can be avoided for a lot of young people if they elect to go to community college. So if you're a person where you're thinking about going to school to get your undergraduate degree, whether you're coming straight out of high school, or maybe you're in your mid-20s or your 30s, or a little bit later in your career, you're thinking about going to school, I would recommend starting with your local community college because tuition often is going to be lower than going to a 4-year school, and then seeing what transfer options they have from that community college into a major university. That way you can save a lot of money on just those general education credits that often are not even relevant to your field of study. They're just 101 classes, they're just introduction classes, they're just prerequisite classes. In my opinion, a lot of times they're just cash grabs by the university. I don't even understand I can't remember some of the general education classes that I took, but I knew there was quite a bit that were just irrelevant to my, field of study. I took like geology classes and just different science. It's just stuff that's not relevant to what I do, which, in hindsight, like, is a waste of money. But what was needed in order for me to actually have enough credits to go straight into my major, which is in business, in which I'm currently wrapping up. But I don't know why a lot of people gravitate towards just going to four-year school straight out of high school. I think a lot of people do it because they want to have the party life, they want to be on campus, they want the whole experience. For a lot of people that are financially strapped and whose parents don't come from, a lot of money, or you're going to have to take out student loans, or maybe you're not able to get scholarships or whatever, going to community college can be your best bet, and then transferring into a four-year school. And that's not often talked about a lot. When I was coming out of high school, they weren't really advocating so much for community college. They're focused more on signing us up for four-year schools. And a lot of people went into doing that. And I wish they would have talked a lot more about doing, community college so a lot of my peers would have considered doing that, and then just doing community college and then going into the four-year school. Because the fact of the matter is, once you graduate from your four-year university, even if you did your first 2 years in community college, where you graduated from your university is going to be the bachelor's degree, right? The first 2 years were just transfer credits that you took to be able to apply to that four-year school. So you're getting essentially the same degree. You just skip the first 2 years on campus and skip the first 2 years at that university in taking their general education classes. So that's my kind of recommendation. I saved so much money. I mean, doing that the first 2 years, I can't remember what the tuition costs were, but I remember at the time, like, it was like a third of what I would have been paying taking these classes at some of the public universities, and for sure the private universities within the state of Washington back when I was doing like college. But again, I think a lot of this is not talked about, but people, if they are considering school, you want to figure out the most affordable way to get an education, right? Like, with information being democratized, with your ability to use AI now to be able to research a lot of things, I think universities are starting to get more and more exposed every single day for the enormous cost they are taxing people to get an education, when you can honestly get it for a third, if not like lower, of the price, right? You can get it through a fraction of the price. And if you're using AI, you can get it for free. So now you really want to figure out, like, what is the most affordable way to get a degree. And honestly, from the professionals that I work with and from a lot of people that I know, the university also that you get your degree from doesn't more so matter. I think it's a combination of education as well as experience that trumps all of that. That's a topic for another video, but I always thought coming out of high school, it was smart to just go to community college, save some money on the general education classes, and then use those credits to transfer to a four-year school, and then graduate with the four-year school's name on my diploma for the bachelor's degree, which is, I think, the most financially smart way to do it, to save some money. Unless, like, you're in a place where, your parents put a lot of money to pay for your tuition for school, you qualified for a bunch of scholarships. Those are kind of like the exceptions to the rule. But for everyday people that are just taking out student loans or paying their way through school, you want to cut that cost down. And so there's nothing wrong, and there's no shame in going to community college. It's not as exciting, it's not as cool, it's not as sexy to say compared to like what your peers might be, saying they're doing in the universities that they get accepted into. I know at the time, for me, it wasn't the coolest thing, but it was the financially smart thing. And now, looking where I'm at in my career today and not having so much money in student loans, I can honestly say that was the best decision I made for my career and for my financial situation. So that's it for today's video. Hope you liked the topic for today. Hit the like button, subscribe. I'm going to continue to just be dropping daily videos documenting, my mindset on finances, different investments that I've been, making, my career journey, different decisions that I made financially that have went well, and, financial decisions that I regret. And I want to build a community of people that just want to follow me on this journey. So hope you enjoy the video. Have a good day. Take care.